Okay, this is the meeting of the 95 Lawrence Road Task Force. It is being recorded. It's 4:03 and we're going to start, and we'll ask Kurt if he's still with us now. Yes, Kurt, can you just kind of tell folks what's happening? We have the article for the wastewater on the town meeting. There's been a grant put in, so just give us a brief update. Oh, I think he may be having some trouble. We may have to
unmute.
Yeah. We may be able to, not quite as in depth, but with as much knowledge, but kind of update people on that. So I think we'll go ahead, and if Kurt comes back in, we'll give him a little bit of time. But just to catch you up real quick, as you know, we are so fortunate to have Becky on board. She worked so hard when she came on, as did Laura and Katie at Mass Housing Partnership, and interacting with KP Law to get our RFP out into the world. So we're really grateful for the huge effort that went into that. We had an excellent site visit on Friday. It was a gorgeous day. There were 29 people in attendance. 9 people were representing the town in one way or another, from the task force or water or wastewater. Bowler Engineering was there. Environmental Partners was there. So it was great to have those people that could deal with things. I counted at least 6 developers, 6 architects, people from nonprofit community development partnership. So it was great, I thought, anyway.
Elaine, quick question from me. Are you there?
Yep.
I didn't know there was a site visit. Did you inform the task force and I missed it, or?
I think way back in the beginning, I sent out, I mean, it's in our RFP, and I sent out the timeline. It wasn't necessarily something that we wanted a whole lot of extra people at, but I think
I had the day off. I would have loved to have gone, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the email I sent right after we got the RFP sent, the announcement sent to the Central Register. I did send a little calendar, but that was quite a while ago. So sorry not to have updated everybody.
Elaine, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there in existence a complete list of all the people that were at the site visit?
Yes, Rebecca sent me a photograph of the sign-in pages. Can we share that, Becky? Would that be okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have to give me permission, or I can just?
No.
Just give me a second to find it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back.
Yeah, I mean,
It's no big. I'd just like a copy of it at some point.
yeah, I mean,
I would too. I think that's a great idea, Jay.
I can.
Would you rather me just email it to the same group that I just emailed the last information from?
Sure.
All right, I'll do that right now while we're in the meeting.
Yep. All right. So from the site visit, some questions came up, and Becky just sent a list of those, and some of those we felt it was important for the task force to hear and potentially weigh in on, and especially with being able to have Laura here today, because some of them are a little tricky. So I will share my screen, hopefully. And which one is it? This one, I think. Okay. All right, this was, Becky, as the procurement officer, kept a list of everyone and has to write down all the questions. And I guess we have to respond to all of them or not, or say no response. I don't even understand that part of it. But we can just go through these really quick. Some of them I think we won't know the answer to, but you'll see what was asked. Number one was, could the access way to the water tower act as a dual entrance to both the tower and the development? In our RFP, it says we prefer the access to be from Lawrence Road. I thought this was something we had determined wasn't possible, but Laura, do you have any insight on that? These are, the responses are from our acting DPW director on this one.
Elaine, I might have an answer to that. I think going back to Chief Polly, he might have made an initial comment with regard to safety and access for that water tower to be separate from Lawrence Road development. But I can't really recall because we're going back in time on that. But I think there was a reason we weren't using that egress because of safety personnel or, fire personnel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that too, yeah.
I remember the same thing, that there was definitely, we were advised by somebody that shouldn't be used.
So would it just be no as a response to this question? Or do we need to find out who said that?
I think it was Chief Polly. I mean, you might want to refer Jane Norton to Chief.
Wait, before we go too far, was this a question that Jay received from a developer or that?
Yes.
Yeah.
These are all questions that different townspeople, different people from the town or representing were there that got from people at the site visit.
And in the red is,
The red for these are the response, I believe how Jay Norton responded, right, Becky?
Yes, the red is Jay Norton's responses,
and
but
so,
I can refer that question to Chief Polly as well.
okay, and Jim Hood, do you have an opinion on this?
I thought we should ask Paul Millette as well, who designed that access. If there's any requirements regarding the width of the road. I mean, I think we were talking about trying to use the existing road, but also have a cut in the fence someplace so that there could be access to the housing development. But I think there was an issue with the width at one point.
The other thing, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I dialed in on a tablet to see if it was better. The phone was really terrible. Sorry about that. So Dave Formato sent an email as well. And there was another question as to whether the wastewater treatment facility could be relocated over into that, toward the water tower. And his comment on that was that using the water tower, access and egress would allow easier access for the water treatment facility than locating it, where it was on the schematic. So I'm not sure how, I guess we still want to answer this question either kind of yes or no. But there was another question, where they kind of wanted to do their own entrance and get the utilities all over onto that road.
Kurt, can you see my screen that we're sharing? Because we have all the questions up. We'll be going through them.
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Okay. Becky, you should let us know, what you need from us or don't need from us. And,
I think it's wise for us to just answer the questions as quickly as we can. So, or have a plan to answer them and not have them floating around. So if no one has an actual answer, I did forward this from Jay Norton to Paul Millet, and the only response I got from him was the response right below, which doesn't answer that specific question.
Mhm.
So
So potentially Chief Polly is one more person to ask, or?
I can, yeah, I can make a note and email him and ask him.
So, Jim,
Yes,
this would have a significant impact on you, so I think it really, you need to, can, can they do this both for access and for the wastewater treatment, use that access road?
again, I think we need to go back and, Chief Polly could weigh in on this, and I think Paul Millet can as well.
Okay, so,
So I can ask Paul.
And then get back to Becky?
yeah,
Yeah.
and as Becky indicated, if we could do it the next day or so, that'd be great.
So I just for organizational purposes, I would just like one person to communicate the answers to all these questions. So that we can make sure we don't miss any. So do you mind if I email Chief Polly? I mean, I'll copy people, but I think we should just keep it streamlined so that I can work off this document and then clean it up at the end with the questions and answers so that I can send it to the developers.
I think that's wise.
Okay.
And I would
Keep
suggest
it organized and
also
streamlined.
put the question out to Paul Millet as well then.
I will. I did put it out to him, Jim. He didn't answer that specific question. I'll ask him again.
Okay, thank you.
Number
My-
2?
Yeah, my only comment on that, for what it's worth, is that it may make sense, given the other question from the other developer, it may make sense to just have one right of way for the town of Wellfleet utilities, both water and wastewater,
Yeah,
and not use that as the access for the development.
I agree. Smart.
Okay, so saying the access, there'd be an access for utilities, but it would not be the access for the development.
I think that would get pretty messy.
Mhm.
But
Or
then-
maybe we should just answer no.
Yeah, I think that's probably the better answer because, you're giving away that, you're sharing that right away access. Granted, the water tower doesn't use it, there's not much, traffic to the water tower, and there won't be much traffic to the wastewater treatment facility. But from this perspective of drawing out a map as to who has rights to what, I think you want to kind of keep it separate.
I'd also add, Kurt, that there might be liability issues with regard to sharing it with the development and the town. And I would prefer that it, be kept very clean, that the development has its own egress and the town has its egress to the water tower and the utilities, which are primarily we own. So,
Yeah. And there is a security gate there now too. And you
Right.
may-
is that considered, Jim, a watershed area
It's there, I see signs there
that say
around,
watershed?
yes, but we're not drawing, well, it may be those signs were from when the well for the school was up in that area, which is now used for irrigation only.
Okay,
Yeah,
Um,
there really is no watershed there at this point.
Okay,
Not as DEP would define it.
I want to make sure, Becky, if you need any clarification from anything we've said, ask. and-
Yeah, I mean, we're going in another direction now. So are we gonna
Yeah.
ask Chief Polly and Paul Millet, or are we just gonna make the decision that we're gonna keep the entrances separate? I don't see how it says to alleviate another curb cut. I don't see how a curb cut is that big of a deal.
Oh, it is.
I
It is.
mean,
It is.
but isn't that the way that it's written in the RFP? Is to have?
Yeah.
Another,
There,
so
there,
it was already planned that way.
Right, it was planned for 2 curb cuts, both on Lawrence Road.
Okay. So whatever you guys want, I just want to know what to carry forward with information.
Laura, do you have a feeling about this?
I would keep it separate. I think using that
Yeah,
entrance to the water tower could be inviting trouble. I don't know. I think there's a reason why whoever told us that we couldn't do it, we couldn't do it.
Mhm.
So, I could speculate who said it and why, but, the task force came up with having two separate entrances for the two different areas. I don't know why we would rethink it now, honestly.
Well, you can understand, Laura, you can understand, Laura, this is Kathleen, why a developer would ask about it. In
Sure.
that, geez, there's a curb cut right there. Why can't we just go in that way? It saves them a few dimes, but I think I agree. Going back, and I can't remember precisely how it was given to us, but there was a reason we were to not consider that area.
All right, yeah. Okay, we have a lot to get through, so I think
So the answer is no.
that's what I would say.
Okay.
I also don't think it makes sense for traffic reasons, so I would vote no.
I mean, in general, I think we want to stick with our RFP as close as possible, and if any of these questions don't, doesn't mean we have to, go over them with a fine tooth comb. Anyway, number 2, Jay is looking into that. He's the one to do it, right? Yep.
Just FYI, Harry had asked the school custodian, but we don't know if he got a response as to what that. Jan, do you have any idea what that electrical equipment is?
No, and I know I went over and I looked, there is a meter there. And
Yeah,
I can't
was
tell you whether
going.
or not it's operational.
Yeah, it was going around, whether it was actually measuring something. I meant Jan Polly. Do you know
Yeah.
what it is?
no, I don't know what the electrical thing is. The irrigation thing, my only thought about that is that it probably could handle it easily because it was the well for the entire school. So since the school is using town water for the inside of the school and the well is just for irrigation, I would think it could handle that. That'd be my guess, but I don't know for sure.
Well, so is it possible to say something like it's a potential as long as the well can handle it?
Right.
I want to just catch Carl up, who was able to join us. Carl, we're looking at the questions that came up during the site visit and hoping to help Becky answer them. The ones,
Okay.
the ones at least that we have any insight on, and we have Laura here, so
Good.
we're very fortunate. Okay. Do you want to move on, Becky, to Dave Formatos?
So for the last one, it's a possibility as long as it can handle the well usage.
Yeah.
With that, okay. Just
And
making-
there's not a conflict with the school.
Okay. And I will follow up tomorrow with Jay and see if he has an answer to number 2.
Yep, great.
Okay, move on to Paul Millet. That's more informational, I guess. I attached that drawing and the addendum that I'm about to issue.
Okay.
So we can move on to David now, Elaine.
David Formato is with Onsite Engineering, who worked with Bowler, to do the whole wastewater study. Okay.
Hmm.
Any ability to move or rotate the ball field? Harry Turkanian said, too much trouble. We'll just confuse things. What do we think?
Well, from what I understood, the discussion was if they could move it a little bit, and who knows what that means, they have to dig it up anyway. whether we do the wastewater or they do the wastewater, that they could potentially put all of the buildings at the upper site and not use the old COA site. So it would have a significant cost as well as flow and other considerations. So it's not actually an insignificant item if in fact that is true. The other thing that we have to look at is what was the motion that we had at town meeting that gave us that, and did it give us access to the ball field as well, or was the ball field carved out? And what does that mean? Is it the physical layout of the ball field or having a ball field?
My question is, doesn't the town have to do all the work for the
No,
wastewater treatment?
no.
Laura?
Yeah, the town's gonna do all the work for the wastewater, but, I mean, I think Gary's right. If, if there's an advantage to, moving the ball field around a little bit, that's not a big deal. It's gotta be dug up like they said, it's gotta be dug up anyway. And I think Dave answered it very well, saying, my thought is that barring any legal or setback reasons, it appears there might be some room for that, provided the developer would participate in the cost, for new fencing, bleachers, et cetera. But I'm not even sure the developer, I think the bleachers and the fence are gonna go when that gets excavated. So, but I think Dave's answer, I would just leave Dave's answer as the answer. I think that's a perfectly fine answer.
What do you think, Laura? I thought this was,
I agree. I think that, if there's room to do it and it's paid for by the developer, if it makes their development easier, I don't think there's a problem, but, it hadn't been discussed, so.
I think it's a pretty tall order to put all the units up on the upper part of the site. I'm kind of skeptical that they could do that successfully. But at this stage, I don't think we should take anything off the table when it comes to that sort of thing, when it comes to the site work especially.
I'm going to agree with Jay. I think that if a developer presents us a plan that does relocate or move the ball field, then we should consider that plan if it's going to be an enhancement for the project. But you might have another developer that works around the ball field just the way it's located. So I think we want to remain open-minded on the possibilities that moving the ball field might give the project, or maybe another developer sees it as perfect the way it is.
Yes, I think I think we're open to consideration. So if it's advantageous to the town, in terms of the developer's submission, we would entertain it depending upon the cost and the impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like there's consensus on this one, as long as, Laura, I know you know so much about these RFPs and addendas, and I want to make sure whatever we're doing is, a smart idea or a reasonable, helpful.
I think it was a legitimate question that we didn't address in the RFP, so let's answer it.
Okay.
Elaine, my only caveat is that what you sent was the warrant article.
Yeah.
And what I asked Jennifer
the
for
vote
was motion,
was
just to
the
make
mo-
sure it didn't carve that out.
Oh, okay, yeah. So do we still need that for Becky to?
Well, I'd go forward with it. I'm just saying that's a caveat. Let's look into it. We could do that tomorrow. You want me to do that?
Well,
I made a
up
note.
to Becky.
I
Yeah.
made a note to reach out to Rebecca for the warrant, the exact wording of the warrant article, and
Yeah,
we can basically use David's answer.
right. Rebecca, it would be Jennifer who's the keeper of, and it would be the motion, not the warrant article.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, the second question there, is that the same as
What year, I'm sorry to interrupt. What year was that?
2019?
Okay.
And it was Article 42.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm. I think they used to print the motions in the town report, but it seemed like they don't anymore. Okay. Number 2, is that the same as the one above? No.
Yeah, I would say no.
I don't think that matters, actually. You know, it's like any other road. I mean, the water line's there. Crossing it, I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, except we've asked for both accesses to be on Lawrence Road. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you know, in terms of flexibility, if that really creates, you know, again, like we were saying before on the other question, I mean, if that really allows a really kind of significantly better project to be done, I don't think there's any negative impact to the town.
I kind of think for this one, when we were developing the RFP, we worked hard at it and didn't see that as an option. So
And
that's,
I don't either. I mean, I don't see how it would be helpful, but I also don't see that if somebody has some creative idea that we'd, you know, would make sense to restrict that, because it's, you know, if we have to repair the water line, the road's gonna have to get dug up, just like any other road would get dug up for repair. But that would be the only consideration from the town.
I don't think that water line, the water line that goes to the tower, crosses that access road.
so what's the answer to this one?
I guess I'm confused how the question is worded. Is it asking, isn't this the same question as the one Jay Norton received?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think so.
So
I
this
had
is-
it wrong. Yep, I had it wrong. I was thinking this related to where the water line actually runs across the ball field to the water tower. I missed that. This is the drive, so I'm sorry.
So the answer is no.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3.
I want to make sure I know some people have to leave early. I want to make sure we get to one of the big ones before everybody has to leave. Number 3, can the 12-inch water main that feeds the tower be located on the site if that helps development?
If the
Paul
developers
Millett
want
weighed
to
in
pay
on that. It's emphatically no.
for it.
That was good. Yeah,
That's what we need. Okay. You good with that, Becky? Okay, but number 4,
Yes,
the answer is yes to that one, right?
and Dave's answer is fine. A below it is fine.
Okay, so we'll use that.
Number 5, we discussed that one already, right? Oh, can
Yeah.
be moved.
talking about moving it.
Oh, this one's about moving it.
Yeah. How do you move a well? Change a well, but not move it.
I think we just answered the second part, which we already did.
Hmm.
Oh, wait a minute. They could drill a new well in a different location if
That
using,
they could
I
do.
think that's what they're talking about, not quote unquote moving it, but you know, could another well be used?
As long as it, you know, I would say there, as long as the school isn't, you know, as long as the school has access to it if it needs it. Because we
Yeah.
don't know if they're using it or not.
Again, I think all this has to do with the siting of the development.
And
But Gary, aren't we bringing water up there? I mean, why would they be interested in the well?
They're not
Irrigate.
interested in the well, they're interested, I don't want to speak for them, Kathleen, first of all, but my understanding was,
I
Yeah.
think it's for irrigation purposes. That's what they're,
Okay,
and I recall that the school, when they first went on the water system, the school was using municipal water for irrigating the ball field. And they ended up with a very sizable water bill.
Right.
Because of that. And then that's when I think they changed over and started using that old well for irrigation.
Correct.
So they're thinking about a developer would be looking at that well or moving that well solely for the purposes of irrigation,
Right,
for landscaping purposes.
right,
And not the town's water supply, correct, Jim?
correct.
Thank you.
But if it's irrigating the ball field, we don't want them to move it, right?
Well, they can move it if the school still has access to the water. The developer would have to make whatever connection the school needs to continue access that they need for irrigation.
So the
So I
answer
could,
to this
so I- yeah, I
two-parter,
would see, yeah, I mean, I would see that as being a yes, as long as the developer pays any necessary costs for the elementary school to continue to use the water.
Is it just the elementary school that controls the ball field?
Yep.
Okay.
oh, the recreation department. I mean, I don't know whose control it really is, but
Yeah, so instead of elementary school, maybe I should say the town.
Town of Wellfleet, either way, yeah.
mhm.
I think the school has control of that well. I'm quite sure.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you're right, Jan, too, but
Quite
either
sure.
way, it's in the town.
So you either say yes, if you do all due diligence and make everything right, or you say no, unless there's some burning need that would mitigate the situation. I mean, have to leave it so that it makes everything right again, one way or another.
yeah, as long as the school didn't lose the ability to use it as they've been using.
Monitor
right?
that, and yeah. It's water for all the way around the school too, not just the ball field.
Uh-huh. Are you good with that, Becky?
Yeah. I think so. So we're saying yes. As long as they pay the necessary costs for the town or the elementary school to continue using the water
Yeah, to remain connected,
to remain, I'm sorry, I can't.
to remain connected.
Whoever's
Oh.
done that is shut it off.
What is that?
I just have to wait. I'm sorry, because of being host, I have windows in front of things that,
Oh,
and, okay, sorry. All right, so now we lost what we were doing. We don't need this. Okay. Okay. Resume share. Okay, I think you can read the calculation thing from Dave, but it's, I don't know if you need anything more about that, Becky, right now.
No, I left that. That was the last part of his email. I just left that on there for informational purposes. What I didn't put on there, which is ironic, was the question that I received about increasing the units. So I apologize, at least I'm here to talk about it, but I had one developer ask if there was a possibility to increase the units from 46 to anywhere from minimum 55 to 65 units. So I know that's probably opening up a huge can of worms, but I did get that question. So any feedback? And again, I'll tell them whatever you want me to tell them. So maybe Laura, you could maybe speak to that if you don't mind, what your thoughts are.
Sure, I don't have a vote here, so it's not.
That's how I feel.
This is up to you. I will say that, we originally got to the 46 based on 90 bedrooms for a IA system. However, if you were to increase the number of units, you would have to increase the amount of time to respond, because I imagine that some developers have already started conceptually planning for 46 units.
I did see that as well.
So that would be my caveat, that if you increased, it's also, you know, it would have to go, I believe it'd have to go back to the Board of Selectmen, honestly. I don't think you can make the decision because they approved it.
I
So,
think what's in the RFP should stay the way it is. We got to keep the playing field level as far as I'm concerned.
You know,
Because then you have to go back
I'm
to
not
everybody.
advocating, I'm sorry, Jay.
No, go ahead.
I'm not advocating increasing it, but I would say that two of the most, the biggest and most successful developers asked the question in terms of that it might not be cost effective for them to build at 46, and that at 55, given the nature of the funding or above, it's much more viable for them financially. Whether it's better for the town or not, or whether we'll actually get more responses, I honestly don't know. But these were significant people, and they both raised the same question. And everyone knew that the 46 limit came from the old standard wastewater.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not IA, just the standard.
It was to avoid a
Yeah.
water discharge
Right, so
permit.
everyone understood the issue, all the significant developers, and they were asking in terms of the financial viability for them, which makes it financially viable for us. That's
So,
it.
so from a wastewater perspective, and again, you know, obviously this is something probably for the board and for
Yeah,
your board and the Board of Selectmen, but from a wastewater perspective, there isn't a limit any longer. You know, the system could easily accommodate those additional units. The only consideration would be, it would force connections in the neighborhood in order to get net zero or to provide a nitrogen benefit within the watershed. When you add, whether it's 10 or 15 or 20 extra units, you're going to have to pick up residential load to still be net zero or positive.
Right.
Because it was really close on you know, at 46, it was really close with elementary, fire, and police. So that's the only other consideration. I don't think that's a problem. It will increase the cost of the system, the cost share, probably for the developer. But other than that, I don't see a reason why it couldn't be accommodated.
Oh,
I do remember,
I see a reason. We spent an awful lot of time planning this and deciding what we thought we should put on the site and what would be gracious and correct and all of those things. I wonder why we spent that time if we're so apt to change it. I don't understand why, if we make a plan and send out, at least for this first time, our RFP, we shouldn't stick to what we spent 2 years preparing. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me that somebody comes along and asks a question that would be better for them, and then suddenly we turn around. I don't know. I just find,
Yeah.
I find it distressing, that's all.
the other issue,
Okay. If you raise your hand, I'd be happy to recognize you so we're not talking over each other. Jay, you spoke once. Carl, who's?
I was
Kathleen?
just, my recollection when we looked at the site plan, the initial, I think it was Bowler that did it. You know, it seemed like it was getting pretty dense, particularly in the middle of the site. And there was some anxiety about that. So, you know, thinking about, I don't have any problem with increasing the number of units, because since the number of units was really defined by the wastewater situation, that's changed. So in theory, we could open that up. But I think the other issue that we do need to think about is the density. And it does seem like it would be Jay may have other ideas about this, but it seems like.
No, I just want to echo what Carl is saying. In fact, I was going to use the word density myself. I think we're pushing it at 46 for what this site can handle in a way that we're going to like. Someone comes up with 60 units for this site, we're not going to like what we're looking at. I can tell you that right now.
Okay, Jen, I just want to say, I think the reason we are talking about it is because the wastewater plant came in really at the last minute, and we never actually addressed the possibility that then put in front of us to increase units. So
Yeah,
that's why we're discussing it, having gotten that
right,
question.
right. I understand that part, but it's just from the very beginning, we had someone come and show us what it might look like, and we pictured all this. We went to look at things. We decided that we didn't care for Eastham. We made decisions based on the fact that this needs to be aesthetically pleasing, and the density makes a huge difference. So I understand that, we're free to put however many there in terms of sewerage, but not for looks, not for graciousness, not for happy living. So that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, hi Elaine. I'll just weigh in we had in-depth conversations about how many units. And I feel that at the start, I had hoped we could get 60 units on that property. Looking at the site and walking it, I felt it could handle 60 units. But this committee started somewhere around 22 or 29 units, and we got to 45. And I felt like, I think the town and all of us could live with the 45, the 90 bedrooms. So it's interesting that developers are coming in and saying, look, it's not worth our while to do 46 units. Well, maybe those aren't the developers we want to have do this project for us. We're looking at a development, as Jan said, that's going to fit in with the character of the town and be gracious and welcoming for the rest of the area. We're creating a neighborhood, and it's grand that we're going with this wastewater treatment system. Ultimately, it will service the the police, the fire station, and the elementary school. So I don't want to push the envelope and say, let's change the number now. I also don't want to change the number because it's going to put us back. We're going to have to issue another RFP, go before the select board again, and it's going to push the whole process back again. So I'd like to stick with our number here.
Laura, I have a question for you. Is it somewhat like poker playing that the developers push for what they want, and say, well, we can't live with it otherwise, but when push comes to shove, they're still likely to submit a response?
It depends who. There are some developers who draw a line, and they draw a line. And if they were the only ones, you might cave. But considering that there was as many people as there were and as much interest as there is at the site visit, if not them, someone else. That's what my opinion is. I've done a lot of these projects at 40 to 50 units, and there's always been multiple respondents.
Great. Maybe we should just hold tight.
Well, I think I agree with Jay and Jan and Kathleen. I think perhaps should we take a vote? Just
Make it official.
make it official.
I don't think there's anybody on the other side.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, do we have a consensus? Anybody wants to fight for it? No. Would you like to take a vote, Becky?
No, I don't. It's whatever you guys wanted. It sounds like you all agree. So I'm just gonna right no in my notes.
It's sort of tempting, but at the same time, delaying it and thinking of all the things that are fitting on that site, it just feels like, I hope we get a wonderful developer that responds to what we put out there.
I think you could go back to this if you don't get what you're looking for when you go to open the bids, and you could also maybe change some other things at the same time if you have to go back to the drawing board and issue an all new RFP. I mean, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could change other things as well, like the other things that we're talking about. So take a chance and see what we get on August 2nd. And my hotel's already booked, so I don't really feel like changing it. No.
And all the other things we talked about they're not going to delay it at all. They're just going to be answers to the question.
Nope, I'm not delaying it at all. That would have been the only reason that I would have done that, unless someone objects to the other things we talked about.
Great. I'm happy with that decision. Thank you all for thinking about it, dealing with it. It did.
Elaine,
Yeah.
Laura has something she wants to say.
I had a question on because I haven't gone back to look at the on-site BOLA report. Does anyone know if that was anticipating a public bid versus the private developer?
I want to say no, Laura, on the public bid, but I don't have any paperwork in front of me, so.
Yeah, I know. I was just looking at the numbers, and I think because it's going to be a public project, that part of it, the numbers may be different.
Right, but I agree, and I think the numbers were private. I did talk to Dave, and the numbers were based on a private project, not necessarily a project that was that had to meet prevailing wage. But at the end of the day, it's not going to change the percentages. The percentages are still, the project cost may be higher, but again, any developer that's hooking up in Boston or Cambridge or Falmouth or Barnstable or Chatham or Falmouth or anywhere else is going to be hooking up to a municipal water system and a municipal sewage system, and that's the end of the discussion. So in this case, the percentage only determines their relative connection cost. So it wouldn't be any different anywhere else. So I don't have a lot of heartburn about the numbers being higher. That's just the nature of the game. The town's still going to use due diligence to make it as inexpensive as possible.
Laura,
we may get, we put in a grant application. We may end up getting grant funding for this. So
right.
We'll keep after that. So the overall cost may come down significantly.
Kurt, that was a question that was asked. If you get a grant, will that affect the developer share?
Yeah, we had a good discussion about this with Harry, and his comment was, there's nothing that would prohibit in some way sharing the benefit of the grant with the developer. But you may want to, as a policy matter, and the Board of Selectmen may want to weigh in on this as well, or Charlie or whomever. But as a policy matter, you may want to use the grant first for the town portion, and then anything over and above that used to defray cost to the developer. That was sort of one idea that was floated. I don't really have an opinion on it, but again, there's no pro forma or set policy or set way that this should be handled. I think it really is going to boil down to, how everybody really feels about it if we're successful.
And if we're talking about MassWorks, there's a significant preference for infrastructure that supports affordable housing. So that would lean it more towards paying at least some of the developer's portion, so that you could, get that preference.
I favor it. I don't know who would, I don't know who ultimately would make that decision. I think ultimately it's a policy decision that would have to go to the Board of Selectmen.
Kurt, is there a time frame that you anticipate getting a response from about MassWorks?
Yeah, what was it, Becky? August?
August
Yeah.
or September. I think it's
August
August.
to September.
Laura, I didn't quite understand what you were saying. I mean, either way, this is for affordable housing.
Not if it's only going to pay the town's portion.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it facilitates the project because frankly, I don't think the project could get permits otherwise.
Well, I don't think the project's financially feasible with with a publicly bid wastewater treatment plant, but without some grant funding in there or town funds in there.
Yeah.
I said that from the beginning, so.
Or yeah, my son's mowing the lawn, so I missed a couple things. Laura, did you ask if the wastewater treatment facility was going to be put out to bid? Is that what you asked?
I wasn't asking it. I'm assuming it is because it's a
Oh.
public project.
Yeah, okay,
I
yeah,
was asking whether the costs in the Bowler report reflected that,
okay,
and,
that's a good question.
Well,
if
the answer is no.
the answer is no, it didn't. So the percentage may be the same, but the bottom line dollar is
Yeah, different.
increased.
I think we have to seriously look at applying grant funding towards it and expecting the town to come up with additional funding.
I spoke,
Or split it, split it. I mean, I don't think, it should, I don't know how much you asked for, whether you asked for the full amount or
Approximately 750,000.
No,
you
the
asked for
grant-
750,000?
no,
the grant.
what did we ask,
Oh, the grant
1.9?
or how much the developer will pay.
Right, the grant request was for the full amount of the project.
Yeah,
And the warrant article is for the full amount of the project. So, I mean, excuse me, for the town's portion. So if we're successful in the grant, I would imagine that, there'd be there's fairly significant room for the town to share with the developer. But I think that decision just goes to, I think it's a Board of Selectmen decision. I certainly, can't imagine that the Clean Water Committee or the Housing Trust or anybody else would be making that decision
No.
because it's public funds that are under the purview of the town of Wellfleet. And I think that the Board of Selectmen would have to make that decision.
Kurt, is the warrant item based upon public procurement?
The answer to that's no, because it's the Bowler number. And that's something that we did not, we didn't, it's something that when I asked Dave what he did, he basically went out, they went out and did an RFP, but as a private party. So no,
Okay.
the answer is no.
Well, there are a lot of other funds available for this kind of thing. So I hope we have our eyes on all of them.
Well, actually, as a matter of fact, we had a discussion just the other day because the SRF, the Clean Water Fund, this is eligible under that as well. And anything that we don't get from the grant from a MassWorks grant, we could still apply to SRF. And I believe we would get somewhere between 25 and 50% loan forgiveness on that portion as well. So yes, there's definitely another avenue that we'll pursue if we need to.
Laura, should we be at least trying to determine what the cost of a public project is? Should we be trying to at least educate ourselves about what we might be looking at?
Well, we could get a number
I-
from environmental partners pretty quick.
Right.
I could actually ask Paul Millett. You know, he knows what the scope of the project is and just ask him for a ballpark estimate.
Yeah, the way costs are going right now, it's gonna be difficult to get anything that's close to accurate, but it would, you know, no one's asked you for it, right, so far,
Right.
but it probably would make sense for you to know that.
And actually, to be honest, I think what we should do, Becky, I think what we should do is be putting in a grant request to SRF anyway,
Mhm.
for the full amount, because we don't know if we're not going to know, I don't think, from Mass Works before the SRF deadline.
What does SRF stand for?
Special revolving fund.
Okay.
So
Can you
it's,
send me the information on that?
yeah. We'll be packaging up a lot of other stuff for SRF too.
Okay. Yeah, send me some info, or if you want to do another Zoom, we can. I thought the way we did it last time worked out well.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
And I can send all of you the printout I have, or Elaine, you may have sent it actually, right? Of the Mass Works grant, the receipt
Mhm.
with, okay, so you guys have that.
I couldn't access, like the box kind of stopped before.
Yeah, that's all they gave me because it was electronic. I'm sorry.
Well, I
And
just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something wrong. So I did
Yeah.
send everybody the Mass Works grant, that
Application, yeah.
the PDF, and you can read, you know, probably 90% of it, but a few of the final paragraphs are cut off in the boxes as they sent it. But hopefully having that done would facilitate any other grant, like, is the SRF is what is that connected to, Kurt?
It's the special revolving fund. It's basically available for infrastructure projects in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the Cape Cod Water Protection Fund, so in other words, this Airbnb tax that's going to the state,
Mhm.
is augmenting the SRF. And the rules and guidelines are SRF guidelines, but the Cape, when it applies to that fund, there's an ability for the governing board to grant loan forgiveness of up to 50% if the borrowing is under $1 million, 25% for other projects that are deemed worthy. And there were some special provisions for some towns that, like Falmouth and Chatham and P-Town, who had already built infrastructure, and so they kind of had a
Their own
special
funds,
little
too. Yeah,
set aside. But basically, it's all Airbnb money. The deadline for that is August. And we'll package up quite a few projects for that as well.
Kurt, could you just give us the 30-second definition of the 208 plan?
The 30-second definition is we have a nitrogen load, an amount that DEP said we have to remove from the town of Wellfleet. And so the plan is all about getting that number on paper to DEP satisfaction removed by whatever technologies you want to propose.
And what does 208 refer to?
It's a section under the Clean Water Act, and which requires areas that have excess nutrients in their water bodies to develop a plan to remediate it. So it's part of the Clean Water Act, and right now the Barnstable County has filed 42 technologies for communities to use to develop a plan that was approved by DEP and EPA. So the roadmap going forward is to access any of those technologies, develop a plan and submit it to DEP. And if they approve it, you're off and running.
So this is all part of that 208 plan, potentially.
Yeah, it's all one and the same. Yep.
Yeah.
Bert, do you want to speak about conservation law and the lawsuit that's involved with regard to not mitigating this?
So the stuff that was in the paper was highly inaccurate. Conservation Law Foundation did sue Barnstable County and EPA. There was a settlement, and the settlement involved the county coming up with this 208 plan, which it has done. So CLF isn't going to touch anybody that's doing things that are approved under the 208 plan. If you're making progress at remediating, at protecting the environment by remediating nutrients, CLF is going to be thrilled. You know, I actually spoke with Doug Foy, who's the executive director of CLF 12 years ago when the lawsuit was filed. And I asked him, I just happen to have a connection with him. And I asked him point blank to please let the Cape develop something other than force a judge to cause us to build sewers. And CLF backed off. They let the county move forward and develop this whole alternative strategy. And, but they want to see communities act. They want to see communities moving forward and doing things. That's all CLF really wants to see.
Okay, I did tell people we would just have an hour meeting. We have worked through the really important things that we had to do. I didn't know, Jim, did you have any water info update you'd like to give briefly?
Just to say that we're on track in terms of when the RFP is going to go out for contractors for the building of the new water main. And that would be, hopefully that construction would start in the fall and be completed by next spring.
Great.
So Becky, do you have what you need to respond to the questions? And is the assumption that we're sticking with the due date of the first week in August?
Yep, I have everything I need except I just have to follow up with Jay Norton about question number 2. So I took good notes and I'll clean up this question and answer sheet. I'll send it to the developers. It's not going to be an addendum, but I'll send it to all the developers, and I will also I will issue the addendum that I put in the email I sent you guys before the packet.
Becky, I want to make sure that we include in that Chief Pauly's requirement that the housing project will be sprinklered.
Okay, is that, I'm
law.
not questioning what he's saying, but is that a code requirement or is that like a
Yes.
personal requirement for him? Because
No, it's a
I
code.
think Laura-
They're
can-
code requirements. They're
it's-
gonna have to meet all the codes
it's-
anyway, so I wouldn't.
Laura, please.
You know, we had a meeting when we did the school. And we had a code official from like some kind of a regional supervisor come to a meeting and sit there and tell us we didn't need to sprinkler the building. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to tell people they have to do something that they don't. Sprinklers are not cheap, so.
You might
Laura,
wanna-
I'd like to hear your opinion.
Call on Laura.
It's basically up to the fire chief, but the code says that anything that's more than 3 attached units has to be sprinkled.
Okay,
So for the most part, everything is sprinkled. Duplexes aren't, or even triplexes aren't, but sometimes they are if they're part of the development where there's larger buildings.
that will come out in the permitting process though, right? I don't need to say
It's-
that.
You don't need to say it. It's on the architect. The architect has to
Exactly.
certify that it's that it meets code. So
Okay, perfect. So I'm just issuing the addendum that I sent you guys, and I will, like I said, clean up the question and answer sheet. I'll send you guys a copy. And I have to sign off, so. Thank you for inviting me to your meeting and
Oh,
hopefully we'll all get to meet in person soon.
We couldn't do it without you, really. I just want to say briefly, under community engagement, there's been an invitation extended to the task force and the town, if they're interested, by abutters to 95 Lawrence Road. A couple of very supportive abutters would like to get their neighbors together this summer to have a little sit down about 95 Lawrence Road, and we'd like to do that, especially, I mean, it is a town project. Becky, I don't know if you had a chance to ask Charlie how he felt about something like this. If a couple-
No, I actually, to be quite honest, I forgot. That was a crazy day. Could you send me an email with the date and the time, please? And then I can have it in my emails and then I can send it to him and communicate with him that way.
Yeah, we've been invited for a Saturday morning, July 10th. I'll send it to you at 9.
Yeah, that would be great.
And, you know, briefly, we thought we could present the needs statement that we've come up with and hear what they have to say, write it down. These would be things we could share with the developer once they're selected. Laura, I was reading on the MHP website about community engagement, and one of the statements was that they actually encouraged the developer to meet with abutters before the actual hearings so that they're not blindsided by a lot of things. So I do think doing this carefully could help pave the way for those kind of discussions that hopefully some things could at least get smoothed over before the actual ZBA hearings. So I guess unless the town feels it's something we shouldn't do, any representatives from the task force would be welcome, and potentially a town official if they wanted to.
Laura, we've heard some rumors that there's actually potential for extra money this year for housing coming out of the infrastructure. Any comment on that or any truth to it, or?
Well, there's a lot of money at a lot of federal money that, you know, the state has. And it seems like the governor wants to direct it towards housing. I think right now there's tension between the legislators and the governor as to who has control of it. So I think if the governor has control of it, it'll go towards housing. I think probably if the legislature by Rebecca has control of it, it probably will go towards housing too. So there may be an extra round next year. I don't know what they're going to put it towards. They haven't, nobody's said, but you know, the state got a ton of money. So
It's nice having a project that's ready to go.
Yeah,
It is.
that goes to
Absolutely.
pushing it along, you know.
Yeah.
As opposed to not delaying it.
Great.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you need anything else from me, Elaine? Because I gotta hop too.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you. I know we didn't actually focus in on the town meeting article and stuff, but you gave us a lot of good information today. And I think it was great, Laura, that you brought up about the public process and how we really have to look at the monies that are coming in and keep talking about that.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you so
All right.
much, Laura.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathleen. Glad you could make it.